Well, welcome everyone to this webinar that we're hosting around Learning is Good. And Learning is Good is a learning program that we have here at Cockroach Labs. My name is Chelsea. I work at Cockroach Labs alongside the other lovely panelists that I have here. And I work on the people development team. So all of these learning programs that we're going to talk about today is something that we kind of manage and build out and evolve as we see things necessary. So I'm really, really excited to be able to share with you how our Roachers, as we call them, use these different programs so that they can learn in their professional life and their personal life and everything in between. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Any comments, I'll try and manage them as we go. And if not, we'll address them at the end. Cool. So I think, do you all want to introduce yourself and what you all do at Cockroach Labs?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm also on the people team with Chelsea. My name is Megan. I'm a recruiter here, and I focus on hiring for our marketing, our product, our people, and our developer relations teams.
I can go
Amruta?
there. Yeah, I am Amruta. I am a staff technical writer, and I work on the security and Cockroach Cloud documentation.
Is it my turn?
Yep,
Yeah.
last but not least.
Hey everybody, Tim Vale. I am the head of our sales engineering team here at Cockroach. And as I said just a moment ago, based here in Atlanta. So good to be talking with you today.
Thank you all. Great, so I think we're gonna start off with Learning is Good. So like I said, there is a program here at Cockroach Lab called Learning is Good. And with Learning is Good, we actually started it pretty early on within Cockroach Labs being a company. I think we started it around 20 people. So I think it's a really good example of you don't need to have a whole people development team to be able to support learning and development at your company. You're able to build policies like Learning is Good, which I'll get to in a bit, and launch it to your team and kind of almost make it self-service. So Learning is Good right now is a budget that we've set aside as a company for employees to use towards things like professional memberships or going to conferences or taking trainings or taking courses or attending workshops. Really, it's a very broad umbrella of what you can use Learning is Good for. But we do give every employee $2,500 annually for that. It's very generous, I agree. But I've seen this work many other different ways at other companies. I've seen other companies say, we're going to pay 80% of this workshop you want to take, and then the employee has to pay the other 20%. I've obviously seen other smaller budgets that companies have, but it's a really great way to make some learning self-service, especially when your learning needs may be so broad within a small company. With that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Megan. She's going to talk about her Learning is Good experience.
Yeah, so Learning is Good is one of my favorite benefits that we have at Cockroach, because I think, at least for me, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I think self-development and self-improvement is something that is so easy to kind of put at the end of the list. And that's often from a timing perspective or a budget perspective. And this kind of removes that excuse because Cockroach is giving you that money. So I focused last year on two different things, and I want to talk about both of them. But one of them was really focused on developing my own skill set, and one was around building my network. So the first one was a voice coach. I had been having a conversation with my manager early last year, and I said, I don't feel super confident in front of groups. I want to be better about speaking in front of large groups or even to individuals. I'm a recruiter on the team, and I want to be able to feel really confident as I'm speaking. So she said, well, of course, spend your budget on a voice coach. So I found one in New York, and it's really awkward at first, to be completely honest. I spent a lot of time, really needing to leaning into to being vulnerable and to being okay, pretending like I'm talking to 50 people when I'm talking to one person, and then getting some really critical feedback on that. But soon as I, built that confidence, I started to really actually enjoy going, and I got to kind of practice those skills that I was learning in the real world at Cockroach. So I would say one of the biggest takeaways for me was that need to practice, and that seems obvious, right? Of course, we need to be practicing if we're going to be giving a big talk or a presentation, but also just practicing the actual act of speaking in public. So Cockroach actually gives us plenty of opportunities to do that. I was able to give our presentations to the whole company, from the people team's perspective. I'm able to do things like this for webinars and other engagements as we are all remote. I'm able to go to workshops that Chelsea may be leading that allows me to practice my public speaking skills. And then of course I do it every day as I'm talking to candidates, right? I'm on the phone every day talking to people and really hoping to make them feel really comfortable. And really, as long as I'm keeping some of those skills that I learned in those classes in the back of my mind, I'm able to better represent our company. But beyond that, I think even as we're doing this remotely, I'm able to continue to really lean into those skills that I learned, because doing, you know, remote conferences or remote webinars like this can feel really awkward. But if you can kind of portray that confidence, then it makes everything better. So that's really what I focused on from a personal development side. And then actually Chelsea and I used our budget to go to Lisbon, Portugal. So there was a tech conference in October of last year that had 70,000 attendees. It was a huge conference. And it was basically, you know, everything tech related, but we went to a lot of talks that were about scaling your company, scaling your culture. And of course, as a recruiter, you know, that's something that's really important to me. But then at night, we were able to go out and explore a new culture. And for me, that was really cool because I've never been to Lisbon, and to have my company not only pay for my ticket, but to have paid for my flight and our Airbnb just really showed me how much our company cares in investing in the kind of human development side. You know, yes, there's not perhaps a lot of applicable learnings of what I learned from being in Portugal, but I was able to meet new people and to go out and spend that time with my coworker. And that investment in me as a person, I think just really speaks volumes to why we think about this as a very inclusive program.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing, Megan. I think, you know, what stood out to me when you were talking, I was like, yeah, you did go to a speech coach. And I remember asking you for so much feedback about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how was it? What did you talk about? And then eventually we thought it was beneficial enough to open it up to the whole team. So I actually ended up bringing that vendor that Megan had used into our office in New York, and we ran a speech coaching workshop, kind of almost as a series on presenting, like Megan said. But you know, there's so many different aspects to presenting. There's literally your body language and how you stand. There's how do you use your voice and how do you project your voice and speak clearly. And then also, how do you tell a story? You know, how do you, you know, have people engage? And I'm sure Tim is really, really great at this, as he's in front of customers all day and has to tell a story. But for a lot of us, it's not something we get to engage in regularly.
It's really, the secret is just expensive microphone and headset, as you can see from the video.
Yeah, that's true. I think nowadays that's what brings us the most clarity in our voice. Has anyone else used their Learning is Good budget for anything they want to share?
Yeah, I have been using my Learning is Good budget, like in the current pandemic situation when we are all stuck at home, to take more courses online. So I took a technical editing course because that's what I want to improve. Like that was part of my personal development plan that I chalked up for myself this year. So I did that. Another interesting way to use the budget I found is that all the conferences are online now. So they have kind of moved away from fixed tickets to donation based. So if I use my budget to donate to a conference, it can actually make it more accessible to many people. So the thing that could have benefited just me is now benefiting a lot of people, and that makes me very happy.
Yeah. Amruta, I'm wondering, do you feel like you're utilizing more online resources now that we're all working from home?
I am, but I'm also trying to strike a balance between not overdoing it and burning myself out. But yes, definitely more than I was before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about reaching back out to the voice coach too, because even though, you know, we are all online, I want to be better at being able to kind of like hold the digital room. And especially if you're giving, say, a team presentation on our Tuesday team meetings, or it could just be, again, something like this, what are the skills or the kind of the toolkit that we can use to make sure that we're not losing the room? Because there's so many more distractions now. You know, you can have your phone next to you, or you can have your partner walking behind you like I just did. How do you make sure that you're able to really kind of hone in on your audience?
Yeah. So I did find a question from the audience. Jack asked, is there an expectation at Cockroach to show ROI for any professional development that's paid for by the company? There's no like formal like direct ROI that we show. I will say we do have questions in our engagement surveys. So we run our engagement surveys twice a year. And we do have questions on there like, I have access to learning and development resources in my role. And it's actually really interesting to see, you know, where we find, you know, certain teams. We can track, you know, who is using Learning is Good, and then kind of map that against where people are responding by division on the engagement survey. So it's interesting to see like where that data shows up in people thinking that they have access to learning and development opportunities.
And then I would also say that people often say you go to a conference, we have a notes at Alias that includes everyone at the company. And oftentimes people will send out, I went to this conference on Go or whatever it may be, and they'll send out their learnings, which I think is really cool because even though not everyone is attending, you're still able to learn from the folks that did go.
Yeah, you're so right. And I totally forgot to mention that. People will like recaps.
I did want to just make a comment kind of about how sales engineering has approached Learning is Good or learning in general. And although I know this has changed considerably with COVID and the like, you know, we as Cockroach Labs participate in a number of, you know, kind of large and small technical conferences all over the world. And you know, we attend those conferences as sponsors. And so the sales engineering team is usually very involved in attending and you know, working the booth, as it were, for those conferences. But one of the things we really try to do and encourage with my team is if you've had an opportunity or would like an opportunity to go to a large Spring conference or Java conference or Kubernetes conference, go work the booth, but then find time to go explore, you know, engage with people, attend, you know, attend sessions and the like. So you know, that was always a very big thing for me in previous companies. I just never got a chance to go to these big conferences. And that's something that Cockroach has been very, very generous with is, you know, the ability to attend, you know, these large conferences in part to work, but also in part to learn. So I think it's a great, you know, certainly for my team, I think a really great opportunity.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tim. And it's something that you just reminded me. We do the same on the recruiting side. Like even for KubeCon, for instance, we were having recruiters go to talk to candidates, but to also learn. And that doesn't even necessarily fall in Learning is Good budget because it's something that we're already sponsoring. So even just thinking about beyond using your budget, there are always going to be additional resources like what you just said, Tim, or the workshops that you mentioned, Chels, that allow you to really kind of continue learning and continue developing your skills.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you all.
One more question, sorry.
Oh, did I miss one?
Do you get clearance for what you're spending on ahead of time with your manager?
So we do ask that anything that you want to attend is approved by your manager. It does have to be related to your role. But, you know, other than that, as long as your manager approves it, it's approved by the Learning is Good budget.
Awesome.
Cool. So thanks all for sharing about Learning is Good. We're going to talk about, I have another question real quick from Kate. Kate said, how did you land on creating a self-guided learning and development strategy? Great question. And I think it just came from, you know, it started so early, Learning is Good, because we were a small company and we didn't have a learning and development team, as most, I think, small companies don't. So it was really just creating something that employees could use self-serve. I totally understand that, you know, when you're hiring the first couple people on your people team, learning and development is not a priority in terms of those roles. So how can you make it a program that some people can just essentially plug into and use on their own? And that was our thought when we built out Learning is Good. So Dogfooding is Good, which you can see as a play on the words Learning is Good, was created about a year or two later. And it was actually built out by our chief architect and co-founder, Ben Darnell. And Ben wanted to build it out because, you know, we are an expert on building out a database. We have a lot of expertise on that internally, but we actually didn't have a lot of expertise externally of using the database from the outside in. So he didn't want the financial barrier of starting up a very small database on your own side project to be a barrier in using our product and giving feedback on it and testing it out. So he created Dogfooding is Good. Again, there is a budget that you can use on essentially, you know, buying an upgraded version of Cockroach DB, you know, using our Cockroach Cloud version, or even just paying for cloud hosting fees or domain names, whatever some of those technical aspects are of your side project, you can use Dogfooding is Good on. So, you know, a lot of our more technical people will use this as well. Our engineers will use it, but Tim, who heads sales engineering, also tried it out on his own side project. And Tim, would you like to share what you did with Dogfooding instead?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and maybe just a little bit of background about kind of my role and why it was very, very important to me to do this. So, you know, as part of the sales engineering team, I spend every day, all day, every day, talking with customers who are interested in looking at Cockroach and understanding what the experience is like, you know, to not only use the database, to ultimately build applications on it. Well, as you just said, Chelsea, I mean, you know, you know, if you haven't really done that, it's kind of hard to talk about that with credibility. And so one of the things, you know, my background is in engineering, a software engineer, an engineering person. And so I wanted to kind of round out my skills on Cockroach database by investing the time and energy in understanding what it would be like to build a real world application against our database. And so there were really two benefits from this, I think, that we found as we went through this process, or I went through this process. You know, first and foremost, I was able to identify some issues with Cockroach DB, particularly Cockroach Cloud. I don't know if I'd say issues as much as, you know, rough edges that I was encountering as a developer, things that I would not have necessarily known or done had I not gone through this experience. So it was a great opportunity, I think, for the collective Cockroach team to, you know, for me to work with our product managers and engineering and docs, specifically where Amruta works, to, you know, to help, hey, look, guys, you know, I'm here, I'm building this app and I ran into this weird stuff, you know, can you help me with this? So I think it was a great opportunity collectively to understand what worked well and what didn't. But then for me personally, it was a wonderful experience to kind of see the ins and outs of what it takes to build a successful application using Cockroach. And it has given me just, I think, a tremendous amount of real world insight and credibility when I'm out there, you know, every day talking to customers who are, you know, venturing to kind of do the same thing. So yeah, I built an application that leverages Cockroach Cloud, which you know about, which is our hosted version of Cockroach DB. By the way, our Cockroach Cloud product runs inside Kubernetes. For those of you who don't know what Kubernetes is, I won't bore you with the details now, but it's exciting stuff. And I deployed my application also in Kubernetes, so got to learn a little bit about that, connected the two together, and we were off to the races. So it was a fantastic experience, and it's one that we're working to roll out really to the rest of the engineering team. I've been encouraging everybody to kind of take on this experience, again, because we benefit internally, Cockroach does, by the feedback, the learnings, but I think our customers and prospects benefit also because our conversations become much more relevant and meaningful because we've been through it too.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I would say about that.
Well, I'm curious, Tim, what was your side project? What did you build? Oh gosh.
So I'll tell just a quick story about this. So I travel all over the world, have to for my job. And I, however, have a very severe fear of flying. And part of that is because I just don't like to fly through bad weather and experience turbulence when flying. It's just a scary thing. It makes the whole experience more uncomfortable than I wish it were. And strangely enough, I couldn't find very good resources out in the world to understand kind of what my upcoming flight might look like in terms of turbulence and experience there. There were some old sites that kind of did it and kind of didn't. Anyway, I endeavored to build kind of a modern application that would allow a user to log in and understand kind of what they can expect from their upcoming flight in terms of turbulence. And so I reach out and I grab weather data and flight data from a whole bunch of public government sources. I ingest that into a Cockroach database, a multi-region Cockroach database, do a bunch of data cleanup, and then have an application sitting on the front of that that users can interact with. And so it's kind of a personal passion of mine. I use it, or at least when we were traveling, I'd use it every day. Look to see what I was getting myself into. And so it gave me a little bit of calm when traveling. But yeah, that's it.
That's great.
Do you ever cancel your flights due to the turbulence?
I shouldn't admit this because who knows who is listening to this, like my boss. But yes, I have rescheduled flights because I have seen the flight data of people in the air ahead of me and realized I don't want this experience right now. So I'll fly out the next morning or fly out earlier instead of later. Yes. Nobody wants to be up there bouncing around like
No,
a crazy
serving the
person. I mean, I
purpose.
don't want to do that.
It is serving its purpose.
So,
Amruta, a question for you. Since you are on the Cockroach Cloud team, do you remember Tim giving this feedback, or do you remember what type of feedback Tim came back with? Can you share kind of that experience?
So Tim is one of our trusted first users. Like we know he's building on this app, so we are very receptive to the feedback, because we would rather polish off the rough edges with him than our users doing that. So he's very active on the Cockroach Cloud Slack channel, and we get a lot of feedback from him. Even on the education channel, like we also get a lot of good docs feedback from Tim.
Yeah.
active is a synonym for annoying, I think is what Amruta was saying.
No, active.
That's right.
Much appreciated. I can guarantee that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, Tim. Personally, I have not engaged in using Dogfooding is good, but has anyone else utilized this program or benefit?
I have not.
Yeah, I think I have, to some
Tim.
extent, I was going to say I haven't paved the way because I know others have, but certainly on my team, it's something that we're talking a lot about. And there's some kind of, there's some ideas of apps that people have built or want to build that I think we're going to start moving in this direction. And just, can I make one additional comment? You kind of said this already, but I wanted to clarify it because I think it's a fantastic opportunity. Not only will Cockroach provide reimbursement for the database, Cockroach database, or other Cockroach Cloud or elsewhere, but we will also reimburse the hosting fees. So, and you said this, I guess, Chelsea, but this is kind of a new and neat thing to me. So I'm running my application in Kubernetes and Google's Compute or Kubernetes engine. Cockroach is paying for that, for the hosting of that. And it's a fantastic thing. Had that not been possible, or had that that not been available to me, I doubt I would have done this. So it's not just about database, it's about all the other services required to run an app, and Cockroach has stepped up to the plate and is willing to pay for that through this program. And I think it's fantastic. Never seen anything like it before.
Cool.
And I feel like, I know we're going to get into Flex Fridays in a second, but I feel like Flex Fridays and Dogfooding kind of combined really allow for the space and the time to actually use Dogfooding, because you have Fridays to focus on those projects.
Well, that was a perfect segue, Megan, because we're going to talk about Flex Fridays next. But Flex Fridays are something that we do at Cockroach Labs on Friday, if you couldn't tell. And the purpose of it is to provide balance to our employees. And know that it is interpreted differently department by department. But when it first started out, it kind of was inspired by Google's 20% time. So Google had said like 20% of your time should be spent on innovation and creativity and things like that. And know that great products actually came out of Google because of that. Gmail is actually one of them. I actually looked that up on the Wikipedia page the other day. But Gmail is one of them. AdSense is another. But over time, our Flex Fridays have evolved because our team has evolved. Flex Fridays have been here since the inception of Cockroach Labs as well. But at the time when Cockroach Labs began, we were a solely engineering team. The first 20-ish hires or so was just an engineering team. And since then, our team has grown to many departments, marketing and people and sales. And so with that, the definition of Flex Fridays has evolved as well. But we see a variety of different things that people will do on their Flex Fridays. They'll do things like development, like pursuing a degree or taking courses. We've also seen people do innovative things like work on a side project, maybe like Tim, or even, maybe prototype some code that's not exactly in the product roadmap. So maybe a feature you'd love to see in our product roadmap, but isn't something that we're goal setting for. And then also we have people who just use it for days as connection. A lot of our Roachers are parents, and that is a huge responsibility and a huge time commitment. So a lot of our parents will also just use this day to connect with their kids, to take them to the library, and things of the sort. And then for a lot of people as well, they'll just use it to work on current initiatives. So it's just a day, filled with more space to think deeper. There's a lot of projects that require more deep thought and no distractions. But I would love for Amruta to share with you what she does on her Flex Fridays, because it is absolutely amazing.
So Flex Fridays are my favorite benefit at Cockroach Labs. That's like my favorite day of the week, and I guard that time very preciously. So when I first joined Cockroach Labs, I wanted to use Fridays to expand my skill set. So I'm a docs writer. So my job is to communicate our technology to the users through written documentation. But I wanted to experiment with different content formats and find ways to do that better. So with that, and I also binge watch a lot of YouTube videos. So I thought I wanted to combine my love for YouTube and my desire to experiment with content. So I started my own YouTube channel, and that has been my ongoing Flex Friday project for the past 3 years. And the first videos I made were me exploring Cockroach DP. So I made a video around Cockroach DP architecture in 4 minutes. And it is one of the most popular videos on my channel right now. And since then it has evolved to more technical writing focused content. So my current series is about the technical writing process and enabling other people to write technical documents as well. So that's my project. And the other way I have used Flex Fridays is to experiment with career paths. So I'm interested in pursuing developer relations as the next career step. So last year, I started using Flex Fridays to run those experiments about how life as a developer relations person would be, and like engage with different communities or take the time to learn about it more. So that's how I use my Flex Fridays.
Amazing. And I think everyone internally at Cockroach Labs has definitely seen some of the content you've produced. But how long have you been building content, Amruta, on YouTube?
Since I joined Cockroach Labs, so 3 years ago, like for 3 years now.
And in those 3 years, how have you seen your YouTube skills change, content creation skills change?
I think I'm more confident on the camera now. Also, I've learned editing better, so it doesn't take me as long as it used to take me to edit videos, so I can produce content faster. And I've also moved away from just like one-way communication to more interactive communication. Like for all of my videos now, I have like downloadable worksheets that I know will provide value to the audience. So that's my favorite thing that I'm doing right now.
Awesome. And has anyone else used Flex Fridays, or does anyone else want to share how they use Flex Fridays?
Yeah, so Flex Fridays, like Amruta, are one of my favorite benefits of Cockroach Labs, because during the week, as a recruiter, I'm talking to candidates and have internal meetings almost all day, every day. So having that Friday allows me to actually have the time to your point, Chelsea, at the beginning, to think deeper, to source candidates, to think strategically about how we're writing job descriptions or how we're going to hire for roles in 6 months. And having that space to do that, I think just completely changes my quality of life, because I feel like it allows my job to be more proactive versus just reactive of working on what's in front of me right now. But also, being outside is really important to me. Being able to travel is really important to me. So oftentimes I'll use my Flex Fridays to disconnect from work and to get outside or go hiking. I'm in the Tetons right now, and it's really nice to have that time just to focus on reconnecting with myself or my partner, my not friends right now, but in a normal world, sometimes friends, and just having that day without interruption, with no meetings, no Slacks, just creates all of the time to do that. And it just changes my ability to then really be productive Monday through Thursday as well.
Cool. And for context for everyone, it's pretty standard that we request that no meetings are scheduled on Fridays. So obviously, when push comes to shove, obviously there's deadlines that come up. If you do need to schedule a meeting, it's going to happen, but we just ask that you ask someone before you schedule. Don't assume that they'll be able to attend the meeting on Friday, but just be like, hey, Megan, heads up. I know that we're coming down to this hiring committee, can we schedule it for 10 a.m. on Friday, instead of just sticking it on our calendar. And Tim, what about you? How do you use Flex Fridays?
Yeah, so Flex Fridays is, again, I enjoy it for a lot of reasons. In the revenue team, we're under a little bit of a different circumstance in that, we work very closely with customers. And for as much as I wish everyone around the world participated in Flex Fridays, they don't. And therefore, a lot of times what we found is that customers, they're using Friday to get caught up and to learn about Cockroach or to work on other things. And so we end up having, do have to participate in customer meetings, but we are working very hard to limit, just as you said, Chelsea, kind of the amount of meetings that we do on Friday. So if a customer, or prospect wants to engage on Friday, we're available to do that, but we try to we try to turn the lens a little bit on Fridays more inward, just as Megan and Chelsea and Amruta said, is, you know, spend time learning about the product, spend time in self-reflection, educating, working on dog fooding is good. You know, do something that you haven't had a chance to do during the week in between meetings, because they come fast and furious. And it's very much related to, or maybe I take an opportunity to answer the question here, because, you know, are there any boundaries on pet projects? And I like this example. Can anybody can do anything? Like a salesperson, can they do coding? Yes, they can. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about it, is it gives you an opportunity to, I think, do things that you wouldn't necessarily get to do Monday through Thursday. And so, you know, I am an engineer by trade, but I don't have a full-time engineering role here at Cockroach, but I spend Fridays writing a heck of a lot of code. And because it helps me relax. I don't get to go outside or do anything like that, but this is what helps me relax. So absolutely. It really is more about what you gain from it than what your manager gains from it, or, you know, the kind of the company as a whole. And so I think that's an important distinction. And the kind of second part of this question was, any Flex Friday becomes serious roadmap items? Absolutely. In fact, the list is almost too long, you know, and again, as we all know who have worked in software development, there are things you have to work on and there are things you want to work on. And sometimes Fridays are for those things that you want to work on that ultimately get into the product.
A great example of that latter question of any projects on Flex Fridays become a serious roadmap item. I think about 2-ish years ago or so, we actually wrote some blogs on what people are doing on their Flex Friday. You can find it on our Cockroach Labs blog. But one of them, our engineer, Becca, she actually wrote about building a SQL optimizer. And now an optimizer is like it's a team. It's a team on our engineering team just focused on building that optimizer scope of what was on the product roadmap. And now it's something that is very full-fledged a part of our product.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think what Tim said too about, you know, doing it for you and not necessarily what your manager needs of you. I know that I've recently taken a couple courses on data visualization on my Flex Fridays. You know, learning Tableau. I've seen these really great graphics, and I was like, I want to make graphics like that. But you know, we do have various people on the team that can obviously whip up Tableau pretty quickly and build these graphics for me if I wanted to. But there was a part of me that wanted to learn how to do it myself. And so I was taking a couple classes at General Assembly actually to do this, to learn Tableau and some data visualization.
And one more quick plug for a program that Chelsea built out, but we now have subscriptions to Udemy for everyone. So I also think having that access to really, I mean, a class on bread making to learning Go, whatever it may, you know, whatever you want to learn, you can learn, and just having that kind of structure, I think, provides a really great resource for your Fridays too. So I'll often do that as well. And it could be something totally random. And I think that's the part, or the beauty of Flex Fridays, is that you're supposed to be learning things outside of your normal scope.
Yeah. And that reminded me too that we have such a curious team as well, that one thing that I learned, and everyone talks about what questions they have and are so open in sharing what they want to learn. And this is actually perfect because Amruta and me had talked about how confusing equity and stock options are. And like joining a startup, you get them and like, what does it mean? And like, what are the possible scenarios that could be an outcome? And there was actually a course on Udemy around employee stock options. And I remember sending it to Amruta being like, oh my goodness, I just watched this, please watch it as well. It cleared so much up for me. And it's just things like that. We are always supporting each other to learn together. Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing. I hope everyone who's watching learned about learning is good and dog fooding is good and Flex Fridays. And I hope there was some nugget that you can take back to your own companies or inspire you as well. I'll stick around a little bit if anyone has any questions that we can address. But other than that, thank you so much all for attending and being here with us.